Have you ever had a strange relationship with food? Do you eat without being hungry, or do you turn to food when you are emotionally exhausted, irritated, or wanted to fulfill an emptiness? You are not alone, my friends. Many people suffer from emotional eating. So, how to overcome it and start mindful nourishment instead? My guest will share her story with food and alcohol. Stick until the end to learn the tips and tricks to help you enjoy eating food without problems. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Wellness All Seasons with Mina podcast. It's a holistic approach to women's well being. We explore how to embrace wellness in all aspects of our lives, regardless of the season we are in. I have been doing this podcast since August 2022, and it was only on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and other platforms. Now I decided to upload it on YouTube so as to make it accessible to women globally. This podcast is for you if you are a busy woman seeking a happier and more balanced life. I'm your host, Mina Qandar, a wellness strategist and certified nutrition coach. My mission is to empower you and provide actionable tips to help you thrive. If this is the first time you are listening to Wellness All Seasons, you are very welcome. I noticed that 75% of you who listen to the podcast are not yet subscribed to the channel. Please help support the channel by hitting the subscription button and liking the video. Thank you for inspiring me to create more content for you. Now, let's welcome my guest, Molly Zemek. She is professional chef and certified sommelier and also author and coach. Welcome and thank you for being with me today.
Well, Mina, thank you so much for having me. It's really a privilege to be here and have this conversation with you. I'm really looking forward to it.
You are welcome. So yes, we have talked a little bit before our recording, and I want you to share your story with my listeners or those who watch, because it will be both video and audio. Uh, how did you came to what you are doing now, and why talking about emotional appetite or food lover?
Absolutely. So I grew up in a family of food lovers that's the best place to start with this story. My father is part Italian. And so I learned from an early age that food is a love language. We spent a lot of time discussing food, enjoying food, making time for food, and cooking for one another as a way to express our love. And I developed a real appetite for eating from a very young age because I discovered in my home the importance of eating and eating well. And I pursued that passion for eating well most of my life, certainly as a child and then as a teenager. But I really struggled with knowing how to manage my love of food with my desire to really feel good. And this reached a sort of turning point in my 40s. I spent part of my career in my 20s working as a professional chef. That's how much I loved food. I just thought this would be a dream come true to spend
Yeah.
all of my time cooking, all of my time preparing the food that I love to eat. And I did that, and it was a wonderful experience. But then I reached a point later on where I wanted to start a family. And instead of cooking a lot for other people, I wanted to be cooking more for my own family.
Yeah.
And around that time, I just noticed that physically and mentally I was feeling worse than I ever
Mm.
had. I was dealing with a lot of stress because I was I was taking care of young kids. I was dealing with being a new mother. I was transitioning away from, my professional career as a chef. So it was a big identity shift for me.
Mm,
And the way that I would seek comfort and relieve stress was through unwinding with wine at the end of the night
mm,
or having a bowl of ice cream and treating myself to that. That's what I considered me time.
mm,
And I loved it until I got to the point where I just really, developed a lot of digestive issues. Emotionally, I felt just dissatisfied with my life. The highlight of my day was anticipating a glass of wine. Now, I never considered myself an alcoholic. I would, maybe have 2 to 3 glasses of wine every night, but I never, I was always able to function. I mean, I didn't black out I was able to go through my day-to-day life, but I noticed that the quality of my life really suffered. I was just I didn't have a lot of energy, my mood was low, and I just felt really stuck because the way that I had dealt with my love of eating in the past was by periodically going on diets. And
mm,
they would work temporarily, and I would be able to kind of lose weight. And it was always with the intention, Mina, of like going back to eating the food that I loved. So I would lose weight, I'd regain the weight. And then I got to a point in my 40s where that just wasn't working anymore. Like I
mm.
wasn't able to lose the weight. I didn't know how to manage the stress that I was dealing with. The effect of drinking was making it harder for me to sleep. I started developing anxiety, and I needed to
A lot of
figure out an alternative.
a lot of things at the same time, and your relationship with your food was not as before anymore because it started to be more addictive, and you take it for pleasure, emotional eating. When you take a glass or something sweet, it's to find comfort in eating.
Hmm. I think that there was some emotional eating happening before, but my body was able to handle it. I mean, I just
Function.
that's the only way I can explain it, was that I was able to kind of bounce back quicker, or I was able to diet and lose the weight pretty quickly. And that seemed to work for me. But
Mm,
in my 40s, that just wasn't working, and the stress was higher.
mm.
And so my habits from the past just were no longer serving me, but I really was struggled to figure out, okay, well, how do I change this? Like I really identified as somebody who loved to eat and loved wine.
And
It
yes,
was
because as women at 40, we don't eat at the same thing like 20 in 20s. So there are a lot of changes in our body and how we consume food as well.
Yes, well, you know that, but I didn't know that. I
Mm.
just thought I should be able to eat the way I did when I was younger. And I had young kids. So there was all of this food around that was very tempting.
Mm.
Um, it was around that time that I discovered life coaching. And I was listening to some different podcasts and I was learning about mindset work. And I remember there was a life coach who spoke about really figuring out the reasons why you're
Mm.
turning to some of these habits. Like, what if it's not the food itself that's leading you to eat? What if it's not the wine
Mm.
that's making it hard for you to stop? What if it's something else? And that, at that moment, it was sort of like a light bulb went on in my mind. And I thought, oh,
Good
maybe there's
question.
something deeper here.
Yeah, to
Yeah,
understand. And you started to ask yourself why? What is this thing that pushed you to change your habits with food?
right. And that's essentially what my new book is about me going through this process of figuring out the underlying reasons why I was turning to food and alcohol to feel better. And I titled the book Decoding Your Emotional Appetite because what I realized is that my physical appetite for food had very different signals and ways of expressing itself from my emotional appetite. And when I paid attention to my body and I started listening to what my body was telling me, I realized, oh, there are lots of times that I'm eating when I'm not actually hungry. So if I'm not hungry and I'm thinking about food and wanting food, that's my emotional appetite. Let me start thinking about what are some of these needs that I have that I'm trying to solve with food, and then figure out how to solve those needs in new ways so that I can actually feel better, both physically and emotionally. And I really just felt passionate about sharing this approach just with as many people as I could.
Yeah. So, when you started to ask question, did you find the cause, the root cause of your habits of eating emotionally?
Oh, I did. I mean, there were several underlying reasons. You know, one of the reasons was for relief. You know, I was turning to food as a way to just like decompress from the stress of the day. So
Mm.
I was just like using food as a way to just create that numbing effect on my body so I could just like temporarily have a break from that, right? Instead of maybe just if I was tired, going to bed early or going out and going for a walk or maybe connecting with my husband and talking to him about the stress, which are more natural ways of dealing with it that don't have the same side effect of eating a lot and drinking a lot. So that was one cause. Another cause, was boredom. And this is something I talk about in the book too, is like sometimes I was just bored, right? Taking care of
Mm.
young kids was wonderful in some ways, but also not stimulating in the way that I was used to. And so food was
Because
just like,
it was new for you. It was your first baby, and it was your for starting from your first baby. You
yes,
started to have this problem.
yes. Well, I mean, even before that, during pregnancy, I
Mm.
was I was eating a lot. And I think that one of the things that I try and explain in the book is that we all have our unique reasons, and there are some common reasons that we share. So one person might turn to food as a way to just deal with loneliness, right? As a way to comfort themselves. They see food as a friend. Another person might turn to food because they feel bored and they're not really satisfying their deeper desires. And so food is just a convenient distraction.
Because it's
Um,
easy. Food, it's something that we can grab, take, and I think that especially if you spend more time at home, it's accessible. It's there. You can take it, and that's it. So, as you have mentioned, everyone has the reason why the person starts this behavior. And for you, how was this period? I imagine that you mentioned that there was a lot of stress, fatigue, and even if you are eating, you don't have this energy. So how did you feel leaving this situation um, regarding your relationship with your husband, your kids, etc.? How was this period of your life when you were uh, dealing with this problem of eating?
Well, one of the things that got my attention was just like how I physically felt worse, but also that I just was not showing up as the mom that I wanted to be.
Mm.
Right? When I was unwinding with a glass of wine or vegging out in front of the TV with ice cream, I wasn't being fully present with my kids. And I also wasn't like showing up as the role model that I wanted to be, right? Those were big motivators for me to change. I also just wasn't as connected with my husband because after, eating ice cream and drinking wine at the end of every night, all I wanted to do was just, pass out
Yeah.
in bed. I was just like, what I mean, I don't know if you know what it's like, but some of your listeners might know, like you eat a lot of sugar, you drink some wine, like you just want to go to sleep. Like you don't have the
Mm.
energy to do things.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so food was very much a distraction. And like you said, it was a very convenient one, right?
Mm.
It's like you get that instant pleasure. It's there, it's tempting, it's also culturally acceptable, right? I mean, we think this is a normal thing for people to do. So yeah, my motivators for change were that I physically wanted to feel better. I really felt like I deserved to feel better, and I also wanted to show up as a better mom.
And you did you seek for help, or you started to ask questions only yourself and find the solution by yourself, or you asked help?
I became a member of the life coach school.
Mm,
They had a program called Self-Coaching Scholars, and this was the website that I had started listening to. And so I became a member of that site and started participating in their group calls and in their like listening to just some of their workshops and really, applying what I was learning to kind of my individual life.
mm.
And as part of that membership program, they had coaches on staff who would coach you for 20 minutes once a week. And so I would start to get coaching and start to kind of unravel some of these beliefs that I had that were leading me to eat to feel better or leading me to have a glass of wine just for relief. And so, as you can imagine, it was very much a process. It's not something that happened
Of
overnight. I mean, I
course.
wasn't just changing what I ate and drank, although that was part of it too. As I was listening to my body and trying to like feel better, I was making some changes with how I ate. But I was also getting coached on like the times that I wanted to eat when I wasn't physically hungry and what the reasons were so that I could become aware of that and begin to change it.
And when you started this process, because as you have mentioned, it's not something that you can fix quickly, how did you feel the transitioning from being really in this situation with food and when you started to work on yourself to change? How was this period with yourself, with your kids, with your husband?
Um, I was excited to sort of start this period of self-discovery because when I realized that my struggle was not because of the food. It wasn't because food was so delicious and I just loved to eat. Like that's what I believed for so long, but when I realized that that might not be true,
Mm,
that it wasn't a personal flaw of mine that I couldn't stop myself, I just became excited to try and figure it out. So it kind of like gave me a purpose. I thought, oh, I'm just curious. Like I wonder if I approach this differently, if I don't try dieting again, but I just approach it differently and I start to listen to my body, I'm just curious to see what would happen. So it was exciting. It was a process of just like trial and error and learning things about myself. And, it wasn't easy, but it wasn't hard in the way that overeating and over drinking was.
mm,
I started immediately to have more energy. I started to just feel better. I started to really become fascinated about some of the emotions that I noticed that were there below the surface. And, there were challenges. I'd say the hardest part, Mina, was changing my identity because
yeah,
for
because
years, yeah.
when you start to notice the positive changes, you want to continue so as
Hmm.
to have a big result.
Hmm.
And I hear that drinking is more difficult to get rid of. How was your experience to stop, uh, maybe not completely, but to do this process without drinking your cup of wine,
That's a great question.
glass of wine?
I think that drinking can be harder for some people, but I also know some people where food is harder. It
Mm,
really just depends. I think everybody's body responds differently to different things, right? Some people, sugar is the issue. Some people, alcohol is the issue. It just
mm,
depends on what your particular chemistry is and your relationship. For me, drinking was a very difficult thing to let go of. And I'll tell you that I didn't give it up in the beginning.
mm,
What I did was I practiced cutting back on how much I drank. And this is something that I really talk a lot about with people who are feeling like they want to change how much they drink, but are struggling because they don't want to completely give up alcohol. Is that I personally don't believe that you have to give it up. I mean, depending on, what your current relationship is.
exactly.
But for somebody like me who wasn't an alcoholic, who was just drinking a little bit too much, I was able to be a lot more intentional and teach myself a process of drinking less.
And
And that was
to adjust your consumption. Yeah.
exactly. So instead of drinking 3 glasses of wine every night, I would drink, maybe 2 glasses of wine a couple of days a week in the beginning.
Mm.
And I practiced sometimes giving myself a break for one day and just noticing, like, oh, like, how do I feel when I'm not drinking for a day? But I didn't give it up because that felt too hard for me to be like, okay, I'm going to give up alcohol, right? Like, I'd been certified as a sommelier. I was the person everybody called for wine advice. I couldn't imagine my life without alcohol. But the really amazing thing that happened as I cut back on drinking, without telling myself I couldn't have it, that was really important. I just started to feel so much better without it. And when I started to get a taste of what it was like without alcohol, like how good my body could feel, how much better I could
Mm.
sleep, just how much more in control around food I was, like I just really lessened my desire for alcohol to the point where now I don't drink at all.
Yeah,
Um,
amazing. And what
yeah.
about, because before I have done a PhD in addiction, and in I participated in many meeting with persons who have had problems with alcohol, and sometimes they stop alcohol, but they replace it with other things. They can't stop without taking other things. What about you? How was it? What did you look for something to take in place, or just get rid of this behavior and continue to drink occasionally, just for fun and not as a daily
I would say
problem?
certainly in the beginning when I was drinking less, and then when I gave up drinking altogether, I would occasionally have these thoughts like, oh, well, I'm not drinking, so I could eat more dessert, or like I'm
Mm,
not drinking, so like I can have some chocolate if I want to, right? And I don't know that it was like replacing one addiction
mm,
with another for me. It was just justifications that my brain came up with, which is totally normal. I see so many people go through this where it's like, oh, well, I'm not doing this anymore, so I deserve to like have this.
mm.
And because the effect of sugar on your brain is very similar to the effect of alcohol, it can kind of create that same, kind of dopamine reward, that same instant sense of, sort of like type of pleasure. But I would say the beauty of approaching this through the lens of life coaching is that you're a lot more aware of what's happening when you notice yourself giving into an urge for something else. You realize, like, oh, wait a minute, like this wasn't part of my plan to have the dessert. So this is actually an emotional response. And I can apply the same tools that I used with eliminating drinking to this urge for sugar. Now, that doesn't mean that I gave up eating sugar because I'm somebody like the type of coaching that I do is not about like eliminating everything or giving up
Yeah,
what we consider the bad things. It's about actually developing a conscious approach to eating so that you can,
awareness.
right, exactly. You can indulge in the things that you love, but because you're bringing your full awareness to it, you can be satisfied with a lot less and you can do it in a much more intentional way. And so that same approach is something that I would use if I would notice myself like craving sugar or wanting to, have dessert instead of a glass of wine is I might notice that habit starting and then also realize like, oh, like I don't really want to be doing this. I don't love the way I feel. Let me like bring some more awareness to what's happening in the moment and then just be present with those urges without
You
giving into them.
Yeah, you started to be aware of the triggers that may push you to consume all these things, and you know that it does not serve in you. Um,
Yes.
so when you started to shift from this situation to feel again like before, and to eat and drink whenever you want without this problem, uh, it take it took you a lot of time to get there where you are, or it was easy for you?
I wouldn't say it's easy, but it certainly feels easier than the old habit of
Mm.
feeling out of control and powerless around food and alcohol. That was not easy. That even though it felt easy in the moment to just keep going back to the food and alcohol, physically and emotionally, that was much harder to deal with.
Yeah.
So this process is not easy, but it comes with delayed gratification. So I would say, and the way that I like to describe this is that this is like an ongoing journey. I
Mm.
mean, our relationship with food is a lifelong relationship. So I would never say that I am like perfect or I've arrived at this place where I'm never going to overeat. In fact, one of the things I tell my clients is that actually occasional setbacks are part of being a human. Like we're meant to desire food. There are going to be times where maybe you give into cravings and that's okay. It's about are those experiences less and less? And are you consistently showing up in a way that allows you to feel your best 90% of the time?
Mm. And I think now you can explain the process to your clients if you are working with the people who are suffering with the same problem. And they can listen to you more than someone else who did not knew this problem, especially with alcohol. Because I
Mhm.
remember when I was in some groups to listen to them, so as to help them, etc. I received all the time, you have never known this problem, you can help us. What do you think about when you start to learn about coaching and all the techniques that you can use to help people to overcome their problems? Uh, it's not automatically that we can have this experience to be able to help those who have this problem. Do you think that it's more easier for you to be understood with your clients who are suffering from this problem, or it's the same process you receive? For example, now it's not easy to give up drinking, for example. How is the reaction of your clients now, because you start to coach people? So how do you deal with this kind of persons who are dealing with the same problem that you knew before?
I think that that's my greatest strength is the fact that I have done the work myself. And so I fully relate and understand where my clients are coming from.
And I think each person is unique, and each person respond regarding the experience with food. For example, it was the transitioning from the life before and after when you start to have your kids, etc. And there are those who are dealing with this with other experience, and it depends really on the story behind each behavior. And what is interesting is that we can listen to, for example, your story, which can be different from other stories. And what
Mhm.
is interesting is to understand that it's doable, no matter what story behind the behavior the person can overcome, and trust the process to do the things, the work to have results. Because it's not something that you can stop immediately once and that's it. It's daily work. I imagine that it's, yes, you have said that you can still work on yourself to be more, always better and better and better in the process.
Yes. And if there's one thing that I really hope to leave people with as the result of this conversation is that there is hope, that you can change, even if you haven't figured it out in the past. The way that you change is by beginning to believe in the possibility. And that's essentially what I did, even though I really felt like I can't imagine my life without wine. I can't imagine myself like not eating ice cream every night. I really tried to into the possibility that things could be different, that I could feel better. And from that place of hope, I was able to take baby steps. And I really do think it's possible for people if they can begin leaning into that hope for themselves.
Yeah, I totally agree. And what do you think about? We are talking about it because sometimes people do some things and they don't recognize that it's an issue, it's a problem until they start to suffer from this behavior. Uh, do you think that uh, people who are struggling with this, the person who is struggling with this problem without recognizing that it was a problem, um, I imagine that they did not even look for help because they don't understand that it's a problem. In your process, did you meet people who are in this situation that they have a real problem, but they don't recognize that it was a problem, and they don't even think that there is a solution?
No, because the people who come to work with me have recognized that there's something that something needs to change.
Mm,
Now, for somebody like me, I recognized that my habit of drinking wine every night was affecting me in a negative way for a couple of years before I did anything about it.
mm,
So I think it's often the case where people recognize that their habits are having a negative impact on their body, but they're not always ready to change. And
mm,
that's okay. My advice to people who are just kind of curious, but not really ready to make the change is that you just start listening to what your body's telling you. You
mm,
just start paying attention to your body and you start leaning into the possibility that things could be different. You don't have to, make a change until you feel ready to, but just start listening to yourself. Like, don't deny your intuitive sense that's telling you, hey, something's off here. Like, I don't know that we really love this. Be willing to kind of listen to that personal truth. I really think it's your responsibility to listen to that.
mm.
Now, not everybody's ready to act on it. That's okay. I do think that the more you listen and you take responsibility for how you're feeling, the more likely you will be ready to make that change when the timing's right.
Right. Actually, do you know some moments when you feel that you have this appealing to eat or to drink, or it's over?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, I'm I'm human just like everybody.
Yeah.
So I will I will occasionally, have an experience where I'm craving something, or sometimes I even, give into the craving and eat something. But what's different about my relationship with food now is that it doesn't turn into, me beating myself up or thinking that I've done
Mm,
something wrong or feeling frustrated or thinking, you know what, I've done some, that this is never going to work. I mean, now I just recognize it as, a blip. Sometimes that happens. It's part of the old habit.
mm,
We all have cravings for things and sometimes we'll give into them, but I really pivot much faster. So if that happens, I just kind of notice how my body
mm,
feels. And then I start to just get curious about like, I wonder why I felt like I needed that. What's going on right now? I think of it kind of as like a tap on the shoulder, like, maybe I need to spend some time really just reflecting on how I'm feeling. Like what's going on? What is it that I was really struggling with? What do I feel like I need?
mm.
There are times too, though, where there might be a particular type of food that I love that all of a sudden I have the opportunity to eat. And maybe it wasn't part
Italian
of my
ice cream.
Italian ice cream. Is that yours?
I love Italian food. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like food is meant to be savored. Food is
Pleasure.
one of life's pleasures, and it's not about getting rid of that. That's why I call my program Weight Loss for Food Lovers, because I really think that we're meant to enjoy the pleasure of food. It's just a process of taking some of the focus off of the food and putting more of the focus back onto our bodies and feeling good.
Mm.
So there's a time and a place to really indulge and enjoy food. And I certainly do that when I have the opportunity or if it's something that I really love. But I just don't feel the guilt or the shame. And I know that it's not going to affect my weight because 90% of the time I'm taking care of my body in a way that just really allows it to feel its best.
Yeah, I think it's the big problem for us as women. We have this idea about weight. We don't want to gain weight. And it's frustrating to have this kind of behavior and start to gain weight because this is how we can feel guilty uh, with our behavior if we overeat or overdrink. And I think uh, sometimes we can focus on our body, how we can support the weight and the relation with the food. So it became as a motivator not to overeat. Our body, our
Mhm.
weight start to be as a motivator. But sometimes the problem is that we can start to play with our body. I had another interview. It was about food addiction, and
Mhm.
the problem with bulimia. For example, yes, I have this problem with the food. I can eat, but after I have a solution, I can do this to free my body from this food. And this is unfortunately a huge problem as well. So, as you have mentioned, when you started to do your coaching, is to be aware what is going on when you have this trigger to drink or to eat more. You start to ask yourself questions. Why? There is something else that you want
Mhm.
to instead of eating, you start to think why you want to eat. So I think you said it right. Sometimes we need just to slow down, to stop, and to ask a question: why am I doing this? To be aware about what is the trigger, what is the problem, to understand why we want to do these things. It can
Yeah,
be
absolutely.
drinking, it can be eating glass, it can be doing all these things that can hurt our body. And unfortunately, it's easy to gain weight, but after it's difficult to lose it. It's a process as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Before we start recording, you talked about your book. Can you tell us a little bit about it? And
Absolutely. So my new book is called Decoding Your Emotional Appetite: A Food Lover's Guide to Weight Loss. It comes out on April 2nd. And I really combined my story of transformation and healing with stories of my clients who have been through the same process to really help people identify with this struggle and also the way through it. And then within that, I talk a lot about the concepts that I teach inside of my coaching program. And what I have identified is the real barriers to sustainable weight loss and to changing your relationship with food. That's not a diet approach. It's more of a mindset shift and developing awareness in your body, which is a lot of what we've talked about today. So I'm really excited for people to have access to this information and to be able to apply some of these concepts, to their own journey with healing their relationship with food. I also talk about my relationship with alcohol in there and how I changed that. So it was a challenge to write the book. I mean, this is the first book that I've written, and it's something that I've wanted to do, but it was an undertaking to get it finished, but I'm so glad that I did because I'm really pleased with the way it all came together. And I think that sharing my story and sharing the story of a lot of my clients will really help empower other people.
I think so. That's why I'm doing wellness or seasons and inviting guests like you to share their stories and their experiences because it can help. It can help to share stories. So thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for sharing and for being with me today. What is your last thing, advice or a word for those who are dealing with this problem and they feel guilty, shame, but they can't talk and they can't look for help and they are doing their things silently and suffering?
My last piece of advice is don't give up on yourself. You
Mm.
need to continue to be an advocate for yourself and for you living your best life, and it's possible. And I say that coming from somebody like me who really had all of the reasons in the world why I didn't think it was possible. I love food too much. I love wine. I come from a family of food lovers. I don't have enough discipline. And I'll tell you that each and every one of my clients has a very similar story. Not necessarily that they came from a family of food lovers, but that they just didn't think it was possible for them. And I
So there
know
is
because of
hope.
their success, yes, there's hope. There's hope that you
Mm.
can figure it out, but you have to be the agent of change in your own life. And it begins with just beginning to imagine how your life could be different
And I
and
think
that it's possible.
yeah, and I think everyone has his wake up call. And most of the time, the wake up call comes from painful experience.
Hmm.
Because in the beginning, when the person is in the situation, sometimes even if it's painful, the person continue because they didn't think that there is a choice, there is a solution.
Hmm.
And sometimes they started to look for a solution when it's really tough. It's really uh, painful, and they can't do otherwise. It's either choosing between two different situations. That's why sometimes listening to podcast or reading a book can give us ideas and hope that every problem has a solution, and there are people who can help to find solutions
Yes.
as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So thank you so much. I'm happy to have you today, and I hope that it will help people as well to
Thank you.
understand
Thank
that
you.
there is hope.
Thank you so much, Mina.
I hope you have enjoyed this conversation. Please, if you like this episode, share it and subscribe so that you don't miss the upcoming